chose this story because it carries three different messages to three different audiences. First, to his family. Second, to his abductors. And third, to all of us here in the free world, especially to us Jews. To his family he says, behold, I'm volunteering information that no one else knows. Why? Because I want to assure you that I'm doing okay, and I'm choosing my own word, and I'm undefeated. And to his captors he said, look guys, I come from a place where a person is judged by the town that he builds and by the wealth that he digs, not by the war and destruction that he brings to the world. So let's come to our senses. A street named after my great-grandfather. At times I theorize that he had an even deeper message here. Something that goes like that. You know, my great-grandfather was angry too. As a matter of fact, in Europe of the 1924, he had as many grievances that you have today in Pakistan. Yet when he was struck on the head with an iron bar by a Polish peasant and called a dirty Jew, he did not blow up a church. He went home, wiped his blood, and told his wife and 4 children, we start packing. We are going home. And he sold everything that he had. And he bought a team together with 26 other families, and they bought a piece of land 7.5 miles east north of Tel Aviv, of Jaffa at the time. And they went there to settle and to build a new future for them, for their families, and for their neighbors, in a place, in a village called Ibn Ibrak, which the newspaper Haaretz in 1924 described as few mud houses with few scattered trees. And I can always hear Danny inviting his captors to come and have a look at Bnei Brak today and ask themselves if such a miracle could not have happened in their corner of the world. So come to your senses. And there is perhaps an even deeper message here, which stands at the very core of Jewish identity. Back in the town of Bnei Brak, there is a street named after my grandfather, my great-grandfather. Why would Daniel's great-grandfather leave Warsaw in 1924, 10 years before Hitler, and go to a desert land to build a biblical town named Bnei Brak? And why would his great-grandson, an American Jew born in Princeton, New Jersey, choose to mention this tiny street in that tiny town, in the most critical moment of his life? Whoever wants to understand Jewish identity and why Jews are constantly being targeted, and why Jews are so proud of what they are doing, they must be able to answer these 2 questions. And the answer is that my grandfather was not born in Warsaw after all, but in Bnei Brak in 100 AD, when it was famous center for biblical learning. Mentioned in the Passover Haggadah, and you all mention it when you celebrate the Seder, and it's mentioned several times in the Mishnah. And spiritually speaking, Jews have never really left the Holy Land. They were all born on Mount Sinai, on the banks of the river Jordan, and on the slope of Mount Masada, and in that village called Modi'in, where the miracle of Hanukkah unfolded. And this unique, puzzling, inexplicable connection between the Jewish psyche and the biblical landscape, which received its first ever recognition just a few months ago by the State Department, and still perhaps eluded most of President Obama's administration, but also 4 generations of Palestinians. According to Palestinian historian Rashid Khalidi, the greatest tragedy of the Palestinian people had been their failure to understand that in the beginning of the 20th century, the Zionist immigrants have a national character. They came to believe that it's another temporary outpost of Western colonialism hastily created to save Jews from Russian pogroms. And until today, some so-called historians view the Zionist movement as a typical white settlers movement and can't bring themselves to understand that Israel's formation was an organic and inevitable conclusion of Jewish history. And the Zionism is an organic part of being Jewish. You take away Zionism from Jewishness and you haven't got any Jewishness. And here stands Daniel Pearl. In a video camera, it was broadcast to every Muslim's living room in the world and tells his captors about the rebuilding of an ancient town named Bnei Brak. In a way, he was telling them colonialism, white settlers. Show me one case of white settlers moving into a country which they perceive to be the birthplace of their history. Or one case of white settlers speaking the language that was spoken in a land before the current residents on that land. Or showing one case of white settlers teaching their children to despise the places of origin, not to adore. Or one case of white settlers that celebrate holidays by events that took place in that land, not in their country of origin. Or one case of white settlers that did not name towns like New Orleans, like New Amsterdam, New Wales. My great-grandfather did not name the town that he built like New Warsaw, or New Baghdad, or New Berlin. He named it after Bnei Brak, the exact name this town enjoyed in ancient times, Bnei Brak. And finally, he had a message to all of us here in the free world. And he said, a message goes like that. You know, despite all the protests and all the criticism that we hear around us, we can be mighty proud of who we are. We are the town builders in the world, not our critics. And with all the images of the ugly West and the ugly America and ugly Israel that my captains and their intellectual sympathizers around the world are laboring to paint, let's not forget some basic facts. We are the town builders in the world. He was then silenced forever. His murderers tried to sow fears and humiliation and division among us, but remarkably, with all the technical sophistication, the outcome turned against him. How? In Daniel's death, 2 formidable ideas were resurrected. First, the idea of absolute right and wrong, which our culture had allowed to be swallowed by political correctness and other fashions. Moral relativism died with Daniel Pearl in February 1st, 2002. It made it crystal clear that not every crime has 2 sides.